Hey everyone, it's Mitch here with a quick note. Before we jump in to the episode, I wanted to personally apologize for some technical difficulties I experienced and for not being as fully engaged during our conversation with Adam Meyers from Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. Adam shared such valuable insights, and I feel I could have done a better job steering the discussion and being present with Brian. However, because of these technical difficulties, I was unable to. So, thank you for your understanding. I truly appreciate your continued support. Adam's message is incredibly important, and I hope you find value in this episode, despite the hiccups. So let's dive in.
Hey guys, this is Brian and Mitch with Shielded Voices Podcast. Today's guest is Adam Meyers. We've been building you guys up for this one. Man, buckle up. This is going to be awesome. Adam's a police captain and certified peer specialist in the state of Wisconsin. Adam began his law enforcement career in 2001 after 5 years as an active duty United States Army military policeman. Adams has been a police chief, detective, evidence technician, field training officer, and he's an instructor in firearms, professional communication skills, scenarios, and officer wellness. In April 2016, Adam was involved in a critical incident that changed his life forever when he used deadly force on someone who armed themselves with a hatchet inside a busy department store. Adam has faced many professional and personal mental health challenges after his critical incident, and it has taken him many years to get back on track. Adam says he would not have been successful within his mental health journey without the unwavering support of his family, friends, colleagues, counselors, and even complete strangers. Prior to and during Adam's law enforcement career, he spent about 10 years working with behavioral health services in southeastern and northwestern Wisconsin and for hospitals with behavioral health units. As a mental health advocate, Adam takes every opportunity to speak about his personal and professional challenges with mental health after his 2016 on-duty deadly shooting. Adam's mental health experience has been published in national and international magazines, newspapers, and other publications. Adam was quoted in the book Living Blue, which is a book about helping law enforcement officers and their families survive and thrive from recruitment to retirement. Adam is the founder of Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. Adam says his overall goal for establishing this organization and speaking about his critical incident is to promote law enforcement wellness and inspire other law enforcement professionals and those who work in the law enforcement profession to speak about their own mental health. So like I said, buckle up and let's welcome Adam Meyers. Adam, how are you today?
Good, Brian. Thanks, Brian and Mitch. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak about my experience in mental health. I really hope that it reaches at least one person. That's what it's all about. So, yeah. This is, man, we're excited. Mitch and I have been talking about this ever since you reached out, and it's crazy. Just a couple of podcasts that we've done. Also, we get an email from some dude in Wisconsin. Like, how does that happen? Like, right? I think it was just off of one or two episodes. And I gave all that credit to Mitch. He's the tech kid. Like, I could turn my computer on. So. Let's start off, man. If you don't mind, let's just kind of go to the beginning. Like, where'd you grow up? Well, I was born and raised in Racine, Wisconsin. Racine is located between Chicago, Illinois, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At the time, it had a population of about 85,000. Born and raised there, and as far back as I can remember, and as far back as my parents remember, I've always wanted to be a police officer, and I lived on Highway 20, which is Washington Avenue in the city of Racine, and it's one of the main thoroughfares in and out of the city. And, police cars, ambulances, fire trucks would fly by the house with the lights and sirens. And every time I would hear a siren, I'd run up to the window and hoping it was a police car because that was what I was really interested in. I wanted to be a cop. And when I would see a police car, I called it an car because of the sirens, So then I don't remember when this happened. My parents said the first time I saw a police car pull over and stop and a police officer get out, I looked at them and said, "Oh, an car man." So I wanted to grow up and be an car man.
Love it.
So all my life, I took the steps necessary, stay out of trouble, graduate from high school, go to college, join the military, everything I thought was necessary to be a cop. And I was really lucky enough to get hired by the City of Racine Police Department, where I was born and raised. And it was great. It was great. I was living my dream, something I've wanted to do all my life, and it was really happening. So it was.
Now, does it, and in the state of Wisconsin, and I know here in Oregon it's different for other agencies, but is a college degree required, or what's the education requirements to be a police officer in Wisconsin?
Yeah, in the state of Wisconsin, you have to have a minimum of an associate degree. It can be in criminal justice, it can be in pretty much anything, but you have to meet that, at least an associate degree to apply. Then you can be either certified or certifiable. When I was hired by the city of Racine, I wasn't certified, so they sent me to the police academy in Appleton, Wisconsin, Fox Valley Technical College. And I went there for 10 weeks, 400 hours at the time. Now I think it's 720 hours. But yeah, that's what I needed to do. So I went to the academy, and after I graduated from the police academy, I was right back at the police department starting my field training program. Right.
So can you walk us through what it's like? Because obviously there's going to be listeners all over the country, right? Like what's the training program look like? So once you complete, I guess what we would refer to in this state as a state academy, and then you go back, for us, we would go back to an agency and complete an FTEP, or a field training evaluation program, in so many phases. Like, can you kind of walk us through what that looks like for you?
Sure. There were multiple phases. I want to say my first phase, I was on what we call a power shift. I worked, I think it was 7 p.m. till 3 a.m. with a field training officer. And I did that for several months. And then after that, I went to second shift and with a different field training officer. And then after I completed that, then I went to day shift with a different field training officer. And then after I completed all those separate shifts with the different field training officers, then it was something called a shadowing program. So I would actually be in my own squad car. I would take the calls. I would respond. The field training officer would respond with me. They wouldn't literally follow me around wherever turn I made, or I stopped to go to the bathroom or go get something to eat.
Right.
But when they heard a call, they knew I was going to respond. I was going to take that call. I was going to show up and do it all by myself, with them shadowing me, standing by just in case I did need some kind of help. And after that was all complete, then I was on my own, and I was still on probation for 18 months.
Right. It sounds similar to what Mitch and I have gone through here, right, Mitch? I mean, like ours is I think three phases, like five weeks each, and then we do what's called a checkout, where you have an FTO riding with you, but they're plain clothes. Mm-hmm. They don't say, it's literally that, like you're taking a driver's test. They got their clipboard, and you're like, oh, what's he writing?
Right.
It's plain clothes, and then once you pass that, you're on your own. Do you remember? And I'm sure Mitch, you probably got your own experience too. So I'll never forget, like, that day one. You're on your own. You're like, oh shit, this is it. Like, this is real. Like, there's nobody in my car. Nobody's gonna help me. I'm on my own, and we don't ride partner cars here. So you're on your own.
Well, and I remember my very first traffic stop, and I know where it was, but I couldn't tell you what I said, if I said the right things. I mean, anything. I was so nervous and excited all at once. And, but it was on Washington Avenue, almost kitty corner from where I grew up. So it was interesting. I pulled over a car. I can't even tell you why I pulled him over. But I was so nervous, like, I'm finally doing this. And, but then, in time, you get your confidence, you start doing the job, and it just becomes second nature.
Yeah. So through as you're progressing through your career, right, here you are, this rookie cop. When you first started, did you already have goals in mind? Like, look, I want to be canine or detective, or I want to be a field training officer. Or were you just so bright-eyed about all of it? You're like, I don't care. I'm a cop. I don't care.
I was happy being a patrol officer. I mean, I was assigned to third shift, which I was surprised, because usually when you're a rookie cop, you get stuck on second shift where it's really, really busy. And, at the time I was married and had a newborn, and my ex-wife was pregnant with our second child at the time. So I just knew I was going to go to second shift. And I remember my lieutenant coming up to me and asking me, what shift do you want to work on? And I'm thinking, well, I'd love to have third shift, but I know I'm going to second. Well, then I think it was either the next day or the following week, I come back to roll call, and he told me that I'm on third shift, and I'm like, this is great.
because my wife and kids will be at home sleeping, I won't really miss any time with them. So I work third shift. I was able to become an evidence technician, and I enjoyed third shift because when you got calls, when you got an alarm call, it was the real deal. You weren't getting all these trouble with kids calls, all these accidental alarms, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to real calls. I mean, real exciting, dangerous, the good stuff. So it's, I did that almost my entire career there.
Oh, wow. So, and it's funny, we talk about what we consider the good stuff, right? Quote unquote. My wife of 31 years she's always like, you guys I don't get you people. Like, I don't, like, she's been a cop's wife for 16 years and she's still like, she said, it's this weird dichotomy. You guys want bad shit to happen. You don't want people to get hurt.
Right.
Like, we don't want people to get hurt.
Right.
But cops want bad shit to happen because that's what we're there for. We get to do something. We get to put our training in use. And let's face it, it's a dopamine dump and it feels good, right? But with having said that, even though it's fun and exciting, it's still traumatic.
Yeah.
Even though it's fun, it's still that dopamine dump, and then the cortisol counter has a physiological effect on us when it's day in and day out for years and years and years, and then sometimes it comes to a head. So
and you could you could go your whole shift and it's boring and it's cold and nothing's going on, and our 10 code for the end of shift is 10:42, and before you go 42, you're about to grab the mic and call 10:42, and then you get a hot call, and you're dead for 7 hours and 50 minutes, and then right before you're about to go home, you're flying to a call, and it's you could be leveling out, and then all of a sudden you just spike right up, and you're going to maybe the most exciting, challenging call you've gone to in a long time. So.
Well, and there's something to be said about that, because you spend, for us, we work 10-hour shifts, and you, like, you're driving around, you're like, okay, this is pointless. Like, you're paying me how much to do what? Like, and then those calls come out, and again, physiologically speaking, your body is going from this calm, even state to an immediate dopamine dump, and you got to be on the ball, making split-second decisions, and they damn well better be the right decision, across the board, right? There's all that comes along with it.
There's going to be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking when they come in to review everything that you had to make a split-second decision on, and
and the stress with that. So, do you remember you've been doing this how long now?
23 years.
23 years. Do you remember your first kind of oh shit moment in law enforcement?
There was one time where I was the paddy wagon. Paddy wagon, you basically respond to different calls where officers are on and take custody of somebody and bring them to jail. And there was one time where there was an officer out writing parking tickets. So in the city of Racine, they had alternate side parking. So depending on what your address was, you couldn't park on a certain side of the street. So he called for a cover officer to come on over, because while he was out of his squad writing a parking ticket, he would see a guy in the bushes kind of hiding out and watching his every move. So I pulled up, and as I pulled up, the guy in the bushes started walking towards me. And I remember saying, "Stop, police, I want to talk to you." And he's like, "Who, me?" I'm like, "Yeah, stop, police." And he's like, "Who, me?" And I said, "Stop." And then he took off running. So I'm pretty sure I was still on probation. I was a new officer. I blindly chased him into the backyard of an abandoned house. I had no idea where I was going. No idea. But, hey, I'm going to catch the bad guy, right?
Right.
So I get into the backyard, and he's trying to negotiate himself over this fence, and he can't climb over it. So he drops down, he turns around, and kind of does a face-off with me and charges me, runs right towards me. I had my flashlight in my right hand, which was a bad idea because I'm right-handed. But what he did was he grabbed my OC container and the handle of my duty weapon, and he started yanking up on it. And luckily I had a security retention holster. Otherwise, there's no doubt in my mind that he would have taken my gun. Yeah. I remember a million things going through my mind at the time. I remember I was carrying a backup weapon on my ankle. I was thinking, should I reach down there and grab it and shoot because he's trying to take my gun. But then if I would have leaned forward, my ankle gun was on my left ankle. If I would have done that, then I would have completely been exposed to him. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I hit him in the head, with my flashlight, which released his grasp on my OC container and my gun, created some distance, and then he ran away. I continued to chase him. Wow. I lost him a little bit, and then we found him hiding underneath a van in a driveway. And then we struggled to take him into custody. Again, he tried removing my collapsible baton from my duty belt. And
even again, after re-engaging, after all of that, he's still trying to do that?
Yep. And I even got on the radio saying he tried taking my gun. I mean, so you can hear all the sirens coming. They're coming, just kind of coming in from all over the city.
Such a good feeling. Good feeling.
Yeah, we finally took him into custody. And I remember going to jail, and that's when we still hand wrote the arrest forms and stuff like that. And I remember my hand was so shaken, and I couldn't even remember the guy's name. And they even mentioned, do you want to go home after this? I'm like, no, I'll finish off my shift. It's only a few more hours left. And it was actually Thanksgiving morning, because I remember going home and my oldest daughter, Sydney, come running out of the living room through the kitchen, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. And I thought to myself, you have no idea how close I possibly came from not coming home. And that was that was a wake-up call. That adrenaline, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe he was trying to take my gun. I couldn't believe he was trying to take my pepper spray, my baton. And it's like he had superhuman strength. And then when we went to court, I found out that he had previously been arrested for attempting to disarm a police officer in Milwaukee. And I'm thinking, this isn't his first rodeo. You got to be kidding me. If he would have had my gun, he would have killed me. I have no doubt in my mind. And thank God I had that retention holster, because if it was just an old school, simple snap holster, he would have yanked that thing out.
Yeah, the old Safari Lands. Yeah.
That would have probably been, a very short career for me. So I woke up really quick. Don't go blindly chasing people into backyards. Even if you want to go catch the bad guy and stuff like that, don't do that. Your safety, your life is more important. Thank God a sergeant was flying by one of the side streets and kind of saw the back end of my foot pursuit and knew where I was. I had no idea. But yeah, that was a wake up call for me.
And that's earlier in your career.
Yeah.
And it's, and we've all got a story, right? That's why I asked the question, because we've all got that first call and it's that wake up call. But as young men and women, it's like, oh my God, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was just, and it's that, I got to keep doing this. It's scary.
Yeah.
But, it feels,
it was scary. It was exciting, but it also proved to me that I could do the job, because I survived. I wasn't afraid. I didn't run away. I was there. I eventually found him, and we took him into custody, and I lived another day. So all that training, the training in the academy, the field training program, all of that is important. Even if you're going through it and you're thinking, this sucks, I don't want to do it. I want to go out there and be pounding traffic and writing speeding tickets and doing – there's so much more other stuff that's important, and you don't realize it until you're in a situation like that.
Mm-hmm. And, that's for – and I've touched on this in earlier podcasts and just in life and talking to people. Like, what you're saying is like that training that got you through that's – for me, that's one of the most gratifying parts of my career as a senior defensive tactics instructor is having people tell me, like, dude, all I could hear was your voice. That's all. Teaching whatever block, right? Whether it's don't give up or, jab cross hook or a jiu-jitsu technique or something.
Yeah.
But as a trainer, as you well know, you've been a trainer for years. Like, when people come back to you and tell you, like, thank you because of your training. Like, I got through, pick an incident, pick a topic. And it's like, that's just amazing. It's such a blessing. It's such an amazing feeling to know that we've had an impact on not only coworkers, but even the public we serve, like the people we chase all over that maybe get their life straight and they come back to us. And it's like, you arrested me 900 times, but you never gave up on me.
Right. There was a time my dad worked with a lady whose son apparently was going through some tough times. And my dad came to me and said, yeah, do you remember this lady? You actually talked to her son in the garage, and he remembers that moment. And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't remember. Right. No clue. But, you make that impact on people. You may be just going to another call that's the same as the last, and you just don't know how you're going to positively, reach people, positively affect people when they're going through struggles. And when my dad said that, I said, honestly, Dad, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to plenty of calls like that. So,
and transversely, because of the amount of calls we do deal with, and some traumatic, some not. Some of them are very pleasant, good experiences. Mm-hmm. But because there's so many of them, the public we serve, and I would guess in a lot of agencies across the country, administrations as well, have this expectation of us, like, we're the consummate professionals. We just are. And I agree with that. However, we have to we need to start recognizing more and more, like, we just had officers or deputies come from, maybe it wasn't a critical incident. Maybe it wasn't an officer involved shooting or something grotesque, but maybe it was enough that it's traumatic, but now you're expected to go get your traffic stats. So when I'm on that traffic stop after cutting a 15-year-old kid down from an extension cord, I just got to smile and be happy and be this robot. Mm-hmm. That's the professional in us. And
that's the expectation.
Right? Yeah. From the public we serve, as well as the administrations that, again, across the country. I'm not speaking about any one administration. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can talk about your experience, Adam, with that, like, because now, like, you're a captain, you're on the administrative side. You've been on both sides of that fence, and God knows, like, just your story and the traumas that you've lived through. Maybe kind of lead us into your career and what led up to, when you started having your own personal mental health issues in your career, because of the career.
Sure. Well, in 2016, I was involved in a critical incident. I used deadly force on a woman who armed herself with a hatchet inside our Walmart. And she had some mental health challenges herself. She was a patient at a state-funded mental health facility, and she was out on a good behavior pass, I guess you would call it, with two chaperones. Now, the two chaperones, it's my understanding that they weren't her normal two chaperones. The chaperone that usually would go out on pass with this lady had to stay back at the facility because something happened. So they just had these two different ladies go out with her. And they went to a fast food restaurant, and everything seemed to be going well. And then they went to Walmart. And at the time, when it was time to go, they basically said, hey, we're going to be leaving. Let's go. And she refused to leave. She wouldn't listen to them. And then she went back to the sporting goods section and ripped open a hatchet from a package. And she started following customers and being threatening and damaging merchandise. Now, when the call came out, I was sitting at the police department working on a retail theft report. When the call came out, it was just a typical call. It kind of seemed like an unwanted person. They're refusing to leave. We get calls like that all the time. We get calls like that at houses, at gas stations, at retail stores, you name it. So I was kind of half listening, half not. And the officer that was also inside the PD with me, I went to him and I said, where am I going? And he just, reconfirmed what I heard. And I'm like, okay. So I grabbed my laptop and started headed out the back of the police department and jumped in my squad car and just started heading to Walmart. Like, not urgent, no sense of real urgency or anything like that. We didn't know that she had removed a hatchet already or was threatening customers or damaging merchandise. And
so sorry to interrupt. I got to ask, like, how does a call like that come out for you? When you say like it came out just a normal call, do you remember? And maybe you don't remember, right? Do you remember how that call was? It just like a welfare check? Was it just? Well, how does that come out?
County dispatch contacted me. I acknowledged that they were contacting me, and they basically said, respond to Walmart. There's a person refusing to leave with their chaperones, and they need help with you escorting her out of Walmart. And I'm like, okay, no biggie.
Very basic call.
Do that all the time. I've done that tons of times. It's not a big deal. So, And as I'm driving to Walmart, the call progressively became more emergent. I mean, dispatch continued to update me as to what was going on because initially the call came out. One of the chaperones contacted the dispatch center, and it was a 911 call, 911 hang-up call. So dispatch returned the call and said, hey, we got a 911 hang-up call. If you have an emergency, please call us back. They did, and they said, this is what's going on. She's refusing to leave. She's in the sporting goods section now. She's trying to open a knife. So when they relayed that information to me, I'm like, okay, a knife. It became more emergent. I turned on the lights and sirens, and I started responding a lot quicker. And I thought a knife, any one of our pocket knives that we use as police officers, a duty knife or whatever. And not to say that would be any less of a threat, but that's what I thought it was going to be. I didn't know it was going to be a hatchet until I got there. So I remember I responded. I was going around the corner initially, and the back of my squad was going, so I was going a little too fast, and I'm like, slow down, Adam. You got to get there safe. You're not going to be able to do anything if you don't get there safe. So when I finally pulled into the parking lot, it was on a Friday evening, 5:15 p.m., lots of people in the parking lot, lots of people in the store. Nobody would get the hell out of the way. And I remember I'm driving this marked police vehicle, light bar on the roof, lights and sirens going, and people are just walking, looking at me like, ooh, look, a police car. And I'm like, will you get out of the way?
And what part of it never ceases to amaze me. At what part, we call that driving code or code 3 driving.
Right. Yep.
It never ceases to amaze me when you're driving code 3. In what part of the driver's manual does it say move to the left for an emergency vehicle? Yeah. Nowhere. But you know what I mean? Like, get the fuck out of the way.
Right. And that's what I was thinking. And I probably even said that out loud because I tend to talk out loud. Sure. So my squad cam probably picked it up. But so I really didn't know where she was. I didn't know where in the store she was. I knew that dispatch said that she was continuing to walk to the front of the store and she was threatening customers. So I initially parked right in front of one of the main entrances. My lights were still on, turned my sirens off, drew my weapon, ran right into the store because she very well could have been right in the vestibule area. She could have been right inside the door. I had no idea. But now I know that, hey, she is in possession of a knife and she's threatening. I need to go in there and try to stop her. I need to convince her to get rid of that knife and hopefully she doesn't hurt or kill anybody. So when I went into the store, there was a man and a woman near the main aisle. And I said, where is she? Where is she? And they kind of pointed down, kind of like the scarecrow. If you ever seen The Wizard of Oz, when the scarecrow is pointing his arms this way, that way, they were pointing down towards the health and beauty department. And that's a main aisle. So I ran down there and I could see she had her back face to me and she was chopping up a pallet of weed and feed. So I made multiple verbal commands to stop, to drop the weapon. She turned around and faced me, and that's when I realized that's not a knife, that's a hatchet. Oh. And she wouldn't listen to me. She didn't listen to any of my verbal commands to stop or drop the weapon, and then I shot her twice. The first round went in and out of her right leg, I believe it was. Right or left leg. Honestly, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Let's clear. I want to clarify for some people that because it's not all just cops that listen to this, right? We're dealing with somebody who has a deadly weapon, is refusing to relinquish or let go of that deadly weapon, and we're in a department store full of people, and I'm guessing there were probably people in the vicinity, right? It's not.
Yeah, there were hundreds of people in the store. 5:15 p.m. on a Friday night. It was busy.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Man. So, she didn't listen to any of my verbal commands to drop the hatchet, to stop. She just kept advancing towards me, and I ended up shooting twice. And one round went in and out of her leg. The other round struck her kind of center mass near her sternum, and then she fell to the ground. I remember the shots being so loud, it reminded me of like a broken speaker, like that. I mean, it was so loud. And I still remember she's not listening to me. She's not stopping. She's coming right at me. Why won't she listen? Why won't she?
So she's advancing towards you with this hatchet.
Yep, absolutely.
in an aisle.
Yeah, in the main aisle. Yep.
Oh,
so
man.
I ended up shooting her. I got on the radio right away and said, shots fired, law enforcement, shots fired, send EMS. And then a second officer responded. Now, I remember there's a lot of things I don't remember. Some of the things I do remember doesn't jive with what other people say or see and on the camera and stuff like that. I'm not a psychologist, but they tell me it has something to do with like your frontal lobe protecting you so you don't have that trauma and stuff like that. But the last thing I remember is her walking towards me, and she was kind of making a figure 8 swoosh with the hatchet. That's the last thing I remember. But people said, no, that's the last thing she did was lunge and raise the hatchet above her head, and that's when I shot. I don't remember that. The shooting happened in 2016. It's almost 2025. And I'll take their word for it because they all wrote witness statements, and that's what they said happened. But I don't remember that.
And are you guys equipped with body cams at this point? I know body cams are probably pretty new right around then.
Right. The responding officer had one. I didn't, but Walmart had cameras everywhere because Walmart has so many cameras. So I mean, I watched the video and that was me doing what I was trained to do, but I don't remember some of that stuff. And
muscle memory.
And that's why training is so important. We work this shift and that shift, and maybe you're working an overnight shift, and then you're told you got to attend training from 8 to 4, and you're tired, and you don't want to mix up your schedule, and you don't want to do this, and it kind of screws up everything, and you're crabby. But it's so important because I truly believe you're going to respond the way you train, because I watched myself on camera do it. And I don't remember some of that stuff, but I did what I was trained to do. So it's like, yeah, that's me and I'm doing it, but I don't remember that, but I'm doing it the right way. So that's why training is so important, even if you don't want to go.
And what a true testament to training, right? To reiterate that, because we've all, it's the same thing. Like, really? Like I don't want to go. We train once a quarter. I don't want to do this. It screws my schedule up. But as a trainer, as an instructor, it's like, you are literally proving our point as instructors,
right?
And you take it to any profession, right? If you're an electrician, guess what? You better go do some training and get some schooling, or you're going to electrocute yourself or somebody else.
Yeah,
right. Wow.
And I've been there. I've worked third shift and then had to suck down coffee all day because I had to be in that in-service training or something, and I didn't want to. And I'm like, this sucks, because not only does it screw up my sleep pattern, but it also can screw up your family life if you have kids and they go to daycare, or your wife or whatever works. Everybody just gets turned inside out. But training is so important. And that's an example right there. And that's just training's so important. I can't say anything more.
Yeah, you can't be emphasized enough. What's up, Mitch?
I was just going to ask about the shooting again. Going back to that, Adam, in your initial response, did you know she suffered from a mental illness?
I didn't. They did relay to dispatch, and there were some communications from dispatch to the responding squads that she has a history of violence, or she has known to be violent. But I didn't know. I didn't know until I got there.
Did it change your opinion after the shooting, knowing that information?
Not at all. I know I did the right thing. I never second guess myself. I know I did the right thing, and under the same circumstances, I would do it again. Nobody can convince me you should have done this, you should have done that. With my years of experience at the time, if I could have used a taser, I would have used a taser. If I could have used my baton, I would have used my baton. I had to shoot her.
Yeah,
there's no other way around it.
Have.
I had to.
Right.
So it didn't change my perspective of things at all.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate for people listening that don't know, this is a person literally, with a hatchet, a deadly weapon that is trying to cause deadly harm to you.
Right.
And it's shitty and it's horrible. But when it comes down to it, we took an oath. Right? We took an oath to protect the public and our fellow officers as well as ourselves. It's in our oath. And
I'm sorry. Like, I am genuinely sorry from the bottom of my heart that you were faced with that. But I'm also thankful that it was you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And one of the things, I struggled with afterwards is I always prided myself in not using force. So once I understood all that, I understood even more that I had no choice. Because through the years, I was always able to talk people down, to not use force. I mean, sure, I've used the taser a few times over the year. I've never pepper sprayed anybody. I've never struck anybody with my baton.
Thank God. Pepper spray works on one kind of people. It's cops.
But I mean, that's something that I struggled with for many years after. It's like, I must not have been good enough because I had to shoot her. No, I was good enough because I did. I was able to do that. I was able to do what I needed to do. And like I said, you can't change my mind. I know I did the right thing.
Right.
Yep.
And you talk about the sound that you heard. So it sounds to me, because we've heard a lot over the years, right? You get this auditory exclusion. It sounds like you had the opposite. Like, it was very loud.
Yeah. That was really evident because the two gunshots sounded like broken speakers.
Right.
And then after everything came back, it kind of sounded like, and I'm not sure if the listeners will be able to hear this very well, but it kind of sounded similar to this. It was like, it's like everything, like a sucking noise right back into my ears. Everything
like
was
a
clear.
vacuum.
Yeah.
Like
a
it's
vacuum.
vacuuming
Exactly.
in.
Yep.
Wow.
And then I remember hearing a lady saying something like, "It's the cop, he shot her. It's the cop, he shot her," or something similar to that. And it was one of her chaperones. And I want to say she was maybe 35, 40 feet away from me. And it sounded like she was whispering it in my ear. And I didn't remember that until the following Monday when they started playing all the video and the 911 call. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was her. She was way the heck over there, but it was like she was standing right next to me.
And did you have any of the, so you've had the opposite. So basically, so far you've had, because I've done a lot of reading on and training, right, on the physiological effects of these experiences, right, shootings, and I've also heard stories similar to yours where like everything got bigger, brighter, and louder. Like I was so hyper aware, as opposed to the opposite, right? Auditory exclusion, the tunnel vision. It sounds like you were just, even your vision, you were just like hyper aware.
I didn't have tunnel vision at all. Nope. I was really tuned in, no tunnel vision. I remember the first thing I remember seeing was I looked to my right and there were these brightly colored beach towels on the end cap of like the sales floor or whatever. And
really?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I remember, people just coming around, and I remember looking at a manager and saying, please get on the intercom, ask if there's a nurse or a doctor here, and if there is, please have them come this way to help out. I remember looking around to customers that were in close proximity to me, and I said, please, everybody, check yourself and check each other to make sure none of my rounds, none of my bullets hit anybody else. And, getting on the radio and calling for help. But but there's a lot of things that I don't remember. And
sure.
So it was
Following the shooting, was there an investigation, or was it pretty cut and dry?
There was an investigation. So my shooting happened on a Friday, so I had the weekend off. And after everything was clear at the police department and I was told that I could leave, they took my gun. I was still in uniform. I had a take-home squad car at the time. I went out back of the police department, jumped in my squad car, and drove home. I lived
with no gun on.
With no gun, in uniform. I can't tell you what route I took home. I lived in the community where I worked. I couldn't tell you what route I took home. I could probably tell you this is what route I took, because this is normally what I did, but it was a blur. I don't remember driving home. I remember getting on the phone. My cell phone was in the visor of my squad car, and I remember grabbing my phone right away thinking, I got to call my mom and dad because I don't want them to find out about this on the news.
Right.
And then I called them. And before I did, though, I noticed that I had like 28 missed text messages from others who heard about the shooting, even people from the police academy that I hadn't spoken to in years. But, we're all cops. We can find out a phone number to anybody.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, okay. But my priority was to call my mom and dad. And I remember calling my mom and dad. My mom answered the phone and she goes, "Hi, baby boy." You know, she lived like 3.5, 4 hours away. And she was excited that her baby boy or son was calling her. And right away, I'm like, "Is dad there?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Can you get him on the phone, please?" And then he got on the phone, "Yo," you know, all happy. And I said,
"Right.
I just want to let you know that I shot somebody at work. I'm okay. And I'm going home right now." And you could have heard a pin drop. Oh. And my mom asked me if I was okay. And I guess I told her, yeah. But later on, she said she could tell that I was in shock. But what I did was I drove home. I walked in to the front door of my house. There was nobody at my house. I didn't have a girlfriend, a boyfriend. My kids weren't there. Nobody was there except me. And the first thing I remember doing was kneeling down next to my love seat and praying that she wouldn't die. I understand the totality of it all, and I prayed she wouldn't die. And then I ordered a large pizza. I think it was like a double bacon, double sausage. Oh, yeah. And watched the news. I was told not to watch the news, and I watched the news and saw the sheriff on there talking about what happened. And then when I took my uniform and my duty belt off that night, I remember sitting at the foot of my bed, and I felt so heavy, like a ton of bricks was on my shoulders. Just so heavy. And when I went to bed, I slept like a baby. I slept really well. And I don't know if it's because of the adrenaline dump or what, but I slept well. I didn't have any flashbacks. I didn't have any bad dreams that night.
Yet.
Right. When I woke up in the morning, I thought, it's Saturday. I wanted to stick to some kind of normalcy. So I was like, I'm going to go pick up my daughter from my ex-wife's house. I'm going to go get a haircut. So I walked out of the house once I was ready to do that, got in my car, and the chief called me. And he, basically, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And he goes, "Well, when can you come in and talk to me?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go get my haircut first and go get my daughter."
Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
This is the next day?
Next day. Yeah.
So the next day, the chief, you were just in an OIS.
Yep.
And at this point, you don't know the outcome of the person, correct? Medically?
Not yet, but I found out during this conversation. Yeah.
So within 24 hours, your chief is calling you to want you to come in and talk.
Yeah, he was on scene of the shooting, though. He was on scene at the shooting right away and talking to me and supporting me. Chief Cal Smokowitz, that was my chief. He's a great guy, 100% supported me. But the reason why he called me the next morning was because the person I shot died. And he wanted to talk to me right away, and he wanted to talk to me in person and not tell me over the phone or not have me find out, over social media or have me find out
Good for him.
on the news.
Good for him.
And he even told me that. He goes, "I really didn't want to do this over the phone, but I just want to let you know she died." And right then, it's like, this changes everything. I killed somebody. And I did, I didn't know what to think. And I take that very seriously. It's something that I live with every single day, that I took somebody's life. She was a mother to a 6-year-old daughter at the time. She was somebody's daughter, cousin, friend. I know I did what I had to do, and I don't regret or second guess myself, but that feeling of taking somebody's life is still there. So I did. I went and got my haircut. I went and got my daughter, and then I went and saw the chief. And when I spoke with him, he basically said he supported me and that he was going to release my information, to the media because there was some calls and I could have been thinking about a million things right then, but the only thing that I was thinking about and worried about was him releasing my police department photograph, which I call my fat picture. Because I was heavy, I was overweight. I mean, I had the whole turkey nut thing going.
Right.
And that's what I was worried about, because I know once it's on the internet, it's going to be out there forever.
That's it.
And I even asked him, "Can you give me an hour so I can maybe Photoshop this thing and kind of
something
trim myself?" And he goes, "No, we're not going to do that." And
right.
But he was supportive through the whole process, and that's I know awesome. That he was supportive because I heard him support me when he didn't know I was there. He would defend me. He would support me to the public, to other people.
Wow.
When I was kind of around the corner listening to him. So I know it wasn't bullshit. I mean, he was the real deal. He truly supported me in every way.
Is that a normal, like, man, Mitch, pipe in, because I feel like for us, that's abnormal to hear. And I'm not talking about, I'm going to keep reiterating this. I'm not talking about it's because of who we work for. I'm talking about as a police culture.
Yeah.
That feels very abnormal to me, aside from, Sheriff Grady in Florida, who's amazing. But it feels very abnormal to have a chief or a sheriff come out publicly and be like, no, we stand behind our troop. Well, not the political bullshit. You know what I mean? It's we stand behind our troop.
Right.
And that's so abnormal to hear. And I'm glad to hear it, though.
Well, Chief Smokowicz was great. And you talk about going out and saying we support this officer. Right here, I have a framed quote that he almost immediately gave to the press. And it said, I think he believed that he had no other choice. Chief Cal Smokowicz said of Meyers, who is on administrative leave, I support him. He told the media that right away, that he supported me.
Wow.
So it was, when I saw this, I printed that out and I put it in this frame, and this frame is really beat up right now, and this sat on my desk for many years after, because when you know your chief, when your boss supports you, you could be having a shitty day. You could be second guessing yourself. But when you know your boss supports you, that means everything. Everybody else could be against you and saying this comment or posting this comment on social media. But when you know your chief supports you, hey, I support you, and you know it's true, that's so important.
Yeah. I would think, no, I know that if that kind of public support, that changes every aspect of the job that we do. Yep. If you know that the top boss in charge is standing there locking arms with you,
yep,
during one of the shittiest times of your life,
right?
That, to me, that's going to make, I'm not going to say it makes the job easier. It makes it a better version of our job.
I'm telling you, Brian, there were many times that I came into work and, I'm gearing up, going to work, and I'm ready to go to work. Once I was cleared and went back to work, there were many times that I went back to work, and once I got there, I just couldn't be there. And I really couldn't give a reason. I just couldn't. And I remember going into the chief's office and saying, I'm sorry, chief, I can't be here. I need to go home. And his immediate response was, that's okay. Go home. We'll cover your shift. He didn't roll his eyes or say, yeah, okay, go home. We'll figure out who can fill your shift. No, he right away, go home. Go. It's okay. Go. We'll fill your shift. Let me know when you're ready to come back. It was great. I love the guy.
What's the at that time, and maybe it's changed in your department now, but what's the policy? You get into there's a critical incident protocol. Like what's the obligatory or mandatory time off, or what does that look like before you can come back to work?
Honestly, I don't know, because there's a lot of, different departments have different protocols. With my shooting, I was back to work in less than 30 days. And I thought I was ready at the time. Maybe I should have took off more time. But, I was cleared by the district attorney's office, and I have the non-charging decision right here. It's multiple pages, and it talks about, it has witnesses and witness statements and everything in here. And that I was defending myself and other people's lives. And so I went back to work in less than 30 days. And
so you're talking, less than 30 days, typically it's 30. Would you be shocked to hear that if I told you that same incident happened here, we get 2 weeks?
No.
Is that normal?
I would be shocked. Absolutely.
Oh,
I know everybody's.
That's what it is.
I know every person's different, but 2 weeks, there's no way in hell I could have went back to work in 2 weeks. I mean,
now you're not forced to. I will say,
right,
in my experience, like you get your 2 weeks. If you're not ready, you're not ready.
Right.
Like this is what I will say about our agency. They are very good about that these days.
Yeah. And I remember, Brian, when I went back to work, I remember leaning up against one of the filing cabinets, in the police department next to one of the sergeants, he was standing next to me, and he goes, "You know what, Adam? You can be done right now. If this is too much for you, you can just say, forget it. I can't do this job no more, and you could retire.
Wow.
And you could go fishing." And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I want to be a cop. I want to work. This is something I've always wanted to do. I'm here. I'm ready to work and keep going." So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, man. Whew, that's heavy. Like that's a lot. That's a lot. That's so you come back to work and at this point it sounds like you've got all the support all the support.
I felt like I had
everybody.
What's that?
Okay. From your chief all the way down, like I don't know, like sergeants, or I don't know what the rank structure is.
I did. I had support from everyone. I felt like I had support. I remember there was one officer, he was rinsing his dishes in our break room, and he basically, said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm good. I'm just kind of worried about stuff." And he's like, "What are you worried about?" I'm like, "I'm worried about you guys judging me." I wasn't really worried about the public. I was worried about who I was working with judging me. And they're like, "Adam, we know you. We know you did the right thing. We know who you are and how you are, and we're not judging you. We support you." So it was, that just reassured me that things were going to be okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So at this point, like you're back under that 30 days, you're feeling pretty good about things and feeling pretty good about yourself. But obviously from reading your bio, something started taking a turn somewhere along the line.
Right. I suffered in silence for many, many years. Before my shooting, I collected wine and would drink wine. After my shooting, I started drinking liquor, basically because it got me to where I wanted to go quicker, so I didn't have to drink a whole bottle of wine. I could just drink, vodka or whiskey or tequila. And so I was struggling that way. I was abusing alcohol. And what I would do what I mean by abusing is I would combine, like allergy relief, allergy medicine, NyQuil, ZQuil, anything that I could put in my little cocktail. And there was even one time that I reached into the medicine cabinet, and my oldest daughter had some cough medicine in there that had codeine, so I put it in there too. And
with alcohol,
yeah.
Wow.
So I was
like how long after your critical incident is? Do you remember like a time frame of like how long? Was it like right after, or?
Yeah, almost immediately I started stepping it up. I mean, I wasn't really doing it all the time and living for the moment that I could numb everything by just getting drunk and passing out, because that's really what it was. I mean, I have a thing of vodka right here. It's 750 milliliters, and I would drink this in 30 minutes or less and just pass out, and on top of whatever else I mixed with it. I mean, there was a method to the madness, because there was bottles of wine at a grocery store here called Aldi, and they had a brand of wine called Winking Owl that you could buy for $2.89 a bottle. So I would go and I could get 3 bottles for like almost $10.
So not the good shit.
No, I mean, it was good because it got me where I wanted to go. It numbed me.
Yeah.
But I was a drunk. I was a bum. So on my days off, I would consume alcohol enough to just get drunk and black out. And I would sleep on the couch and just pass out the whole time. And I became a bum. I didn't do the dishes. I didn't do laundry. I didn't clean the house. I didn't cut the grass. I didn't do anything. I gained a lot of weight. I was eating like crap, fast food. I wasn't exercising anymore. And on top of abusing alcohol, I was also meeting women online for casual sex. It was strictly about sex. And I like sex. It feels good. It took, it kind of numbed what I was going through. But
dopamine.
Yeah. And I was always worried about, what if I get this person pregnant? What if I catch an STD? But even with that, it wasn't enough to stop. And over time, I just didn't like myself anymore. I remember laying next to a woman after we had sex, and I thought, what are you doing, man? This is just not you. This isn't working anymore. And
what's the time frame in all this, Adam? Like, because from what I understand, like you get through your critical incident, you've got support, and you're back to work. So, like, what's the time frame before you kind of start taking this downward
Well,
mental health issues.
My shooting happened April 8th, 2016. So I want to say probably towards the end of 2016 into 17. That's when kind of hit the ground running with all this poor coping. And,
right.
On top of abuse and alcohol and casual sex, I tried marijuana for the first time in my life. And I always prided myself in never doing any drugs. And, I even remember when I joined the Army, I was at the MEP station and they were doing all kinds of tests on me and stuff like that. And they asked me if I did marijuana, and I said I'd never done it. And they were kind of like,
Ever.
And you could tell,
right?
They didn't believe me. And they said,
I went through the same.
Yeah. They're like, you can still be a military police if you smoke pot. And I'm like, I haven't. I've never done drugs in my life. And you could tell they didn't believe me. But at the time, I was just looking for the next thing to numb my pain, to make me feel good. And I remember trying a marijuana gummy, and then I remember, smoking on a bowl. And at the time, I really don't even remember getting high because I was so intoxicated at the time too. And all this poor coping didn't do anything but cause me more stress, more anxiety, more depression. Right. Once I kind of sobered up, it doesn't help. It doesn't make anything go away.
This is all happening. While still, I'm not saying on duty,
right?
But you're still employed as a police officer. Like, you're back to work, and all of the alcohol abuse, the casual sex, the marijuana use is still while being employed as a police officer, because you're just trying to cope.
Right, exactly. And then in 2017, I think it was on my birthday, 2017, I was promoted to the police department's first detective. So I was a detective, and then I continued to go to critical incident after critical incident. So on top of me struggling and trying to deal with my own shit, I was, cumulative stress and stuff on top of that. But I continued to do my job well. I mean, through all this, I was never suspended. I was never disciplined. I received awards. I received awards from the state, from the police association, all that stuff. I mean, I was never disciplined, suspended, anything.
I mean, are you that good of an actor? Like, did anybody, nobody?
I find it hard to believe that nobody knew that I was struggling. I just think they didn't know what to say, or they didn't want to get involved. And I get that because I've been there before. I've been there before. Yep. I'm like, man, I don't know what to say, or maybe I'm too new and I don't want to overstep, so I just don't get involved, or I don't say anything. There's no way in hell that nobody knew something was going on.
And look, and that is this, conversations that I've had with so many people over the years, and I just had this conversation today. That's a forgive me, Lord, that's a big fucking issue, because in the last podcast I talked about that locking arms, the circle. Look to the person to your left and your right. Yep. That's who you take care of. Yep. It doesn't matter who it is and when it is.
Right.
And part of taking care of each other is getting involved. And I may be wrong, and this is maybe where your administrative hat comes on, but in the policing culture in this country, people are too chicken shit, rightfully so, to get involved because they're scared of getting involved, retribution, getting tangled up in somebody else's eye. I don't want any part of that. Right. And the shitty thing about that is it leaves your teammates, you're hanging your teammates out to dry. Yep. You just are. I can tell you in my time in the military, that didn't happen.
Right.
No, we didn't cover things up. I'm not saying cover up and lie.
Right.
But what I'm telling you is when it comes to my teammates, and I'm still this way to this day, and every coworker could say the same, and I'm confident they would say this about me. I will never leave a coworker, a friend, a family member hanging out to dry, even if it means me getting wrapped up somehow. I don't care, because my integrity and my character come long before this job.
Right. Oh yeah.
For me, right? Yep. And I think that's a problem across the law enforcement community.
Right. I agree with you 100%. I mean, I may be a captain, but when somebody needs my help, especially when it comes to mental health, those captain bars come off, and I'm a police officer, and I'm a friend, and I'm there to help them.
Yes,
I mean,
a human.
And if supporting somebody when they're struggling, I lose my job, that's whatever. They need me. I may be the only person that reaches out and helps them. And like you said, do you think nobody knew? I think people knew. I think it was really easy to hide it from my family because they live 3.5, 4 hours away. So when they ask you, are you doing okay? Yep, I'm good.
Yep.
And they could even have a gut instinct that no, he's not, but they can't prove it. But I'm working with these.
I'm sure your mama did that mama intuition, right?
And she even told me, she goes, I knew you were struggling. And there were times I wanted to, even the night of the shooting, her first instinct was to come up and be with her son. And she wanted to do that, but then she's like, well, you're a grown man, and I know you're going to be okay, and I know you can handle this, but I'm still your mom. But I find it hard to believe. I truly believe people just didn't want to get involved, or they didn't know what to do, so they just did nothing. Wow. Because there was a time where my own police department came and did a welfare check on me. I was on a phone call, well, basically texting back and forth with somebody I went to the police academy with, and apparently I texted something that caused some concern, and then I thought the conversation was over, so I stopped communicating. Well, they couldn't get a hold of me, so they called the police department. They came and checked on me. Yeah. And then another time, the sheriff's department came and checked on me. That's okay. That's a good thing.
You bet.
Check on your people. I didn't hold a grudge against anybody. I understand. I wasn't angry with people calling the police to come check on me, or those police departments, sheriff's department coming and checking on me. That's important. But to do nothing, I mean, you want to wake up and find out this person killed themselves? And then you could have been the one that maybe talked to them and been there for them when they needed somebody. You could be the only person.
Which is why talking about this unfiltered and raw, and I think we've even said this prior on like, this is so important. And even if it rubs somebody the wrong way, right? And I really hope it doesn't, but being open, and because if it reaches one person, that's a mic drop moment. Like,
well, and here's an example. I was at a wedding party, and I had way too much to drink, and I was posting, oh, poor me, my life sucks. I wish I could have called in sick that day and never shot this person and stuff like that. I was posting that on Facebook. So many people at the police department were friends with me on Facebook, so they read it. Sure. My pastor said something to me, and I basically told him to go fuck himself.
Jeez.
And I don't remember doing that because I was so drunk. But when I went back and read the stuff, I was like, oh my gosh.
What did I do?
So they read, you can't tell me that people at the PD didn't read this stuff and see it. But it's just,
Stigma.
But I understand because I was in their shoes too. I didn't know what to do, or I didn't want to get involved. So I did nothing.
And I understand too.
Yeah. But
how do we change that? How do we? And I hate to say it because you're a captain, sucks for you. But it starts at the top.
Right.
It starts at the top. Well, actually, I'll take that back. It starts across the board, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Not only with leadership, but we have to be able to live and work in a culture that we know it's safe to do so, and that it's okay. Like, I'm on administrative leave. I refer to it as administrative leave herpes. Nobody wants to be around me.
Right.
Nope. I don't want that. Like I didn't commit crimes, people. I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do we change that culture of coming alongside your people without being so afraid of the administration you work for?
I think it starts in colleges when you're trying to get that degree. In criminal justice, I think it begins in the police academies. But then somehow that has to transfer over to every police department too, because every city, town, village, state, federal, they all have their own things going on. People need to know, police officers need to know it's okay to talk about your mental health. It's okay to reach out and get help. Yeah. And it's okay if you help somebody that's going through something. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and it's easier said than done. I mean, there's a stigma. I truly believe there always will be a stigma. I think it's getting better.
I agree.
Like your podcast, us talking about it. I think it's getting better, but I think it's always going to be there. But even as a captain, I mean, I learned a lot from Chief Smokowitz because of his leadership, how he supported me right away, how he told people he supported me. How he made it okay for me to go in his office and say, Chief, I can't be here. I have to go home. Yeah. And he didn't roll his eyes or anything. He's basically, go home. Just let me know when you're ready to come back. So, I mean, that kind of support, I don't know how you copy that and put it everywhere.
I know. But that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
Adam, do you notice these similar behaviors or experiences in your own troops? Or have you seen them before, and have you pulled them aside, tried to help them or offer some sort of advice?
I haven't seen them in my own troops. I mean, I've noticed that some may be stressed, and I just kind of reiterate to them, hey, if you need somebody, call me, text me. If you need me to come pick you up, I'll do that. They all know my experience. I'm not quiet about it, so they know I went through a lot of stuff. So I believe that they think I'm the real deal, and I'm not just bullshitting them. And I hope that if they do struggle, that they do reach out to me. I've seen it in other officers, like when I attend training or just speaking with other officers on the street that, hey, maybe they might be going through something, but, I don't have enough really to say anything. But I always fall back on, hey, in 2016, I was involved in a shooting. I went through a lot of stuff. If you ever need to talk, you can talk to me. I won't tell anybody anything. And even some of the police officers at the police department that I was terminated from, they would come in my detective office. They'd come into work a little bit early and come into my detective office and say, hey, can I talk to you? I had a rough weekend. And I said, yeah, come on in. And then they'd just vent to me, and that's as far as it went. I didn't tell the chief. I didn't tell anybody. I said, I'm here. If you need somebody, let me know. And one officer came more than once. And that's important, that he knew that he could vent to somebody, and that vent to somebody that accepted him and didn't judge him and didn't, crucify him for being human.
Right. Yeah. And I think for me, when it comes to the mental, I think agencies across the country are doing so much better with the mental health thing. There's so much more awareness now. Right. And again, the agency we work for, they are doing outstanding things for that. They absolutely are. There's no question about that. Nobody could ever, somebody might argue that, but in my experience, they're doing great things. For me, it's more, there's also a mental health aspect to, let's say if people are on administrative leave for punitive reasons or something, right? There's still, and I'm not talking about my experience. Mm-hmm. I'm genuinely not. I'm not, for those of you that are listening, I'm not referring to me in this. I've been a union rep for a long time. So I've got a lot of experience in people being put on administrative leave for various disciplinary reasons. So please understand, I'm absolutely not referring to me. I've just seen these experiences. I mean, it is extremely hard on people, because now you're cast on this island and nobody wants anything to do with you.
Right.
And so now you're alone. This team that you literally just ran into a gunfight with a month ago,
right,
now treats you like you don't exist, because they want nothing to do with that. They don't want to get involved. And it's that stigma that I think is as hopefully as years go on, like it really is in my deepest prayers that changes within the law enforcement community across the country.
Yeah, and
I really do hope that happens.
I understand what you mean, Brian, because what happened to me is in December of 2021, I attended an active shooter training at a school, and I had a panic attack. There was probably about 25 officers there, and we were all watching a PowerPoint presentation going over the different active shooters that had happened over the years. And there were a handful of them that happened in April. And that's when my shooting occurred. And they kept saying April. And I started feeling really, really hot, really uncomfortable, got a knot in my stomach, started sweating. And I was seated comfortably in a chair. And about a minute, I went up to wipe my forehead, and it was drenched in sweat. And I was like, I'm freaking out. I'm having a panic attack. And my first response, my first instinct was, I got to fight it. I got to hide this. I can't let anybody here know that I'm going through this. But it would have been okay. Everybody there knew what I went through. If I would have just said, I can't do this training, I got to go, everybody would have been okay with it. Everybody would have understood. But my first response was, I got to hide it. I got to fight through it. And that's what I did. I continued the training, then went home on a couple of days off. And on New Year's Eve, I worked a patrol shift for one of the officers to have off. And I remember I grabbed my laptop and sat in the squad and put my laptop in the terminal. And I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I quit. I ain't doing this no more. And I don't think what I meant was I wanted to quit being a cop. I really think it was I wanted to quit coping poorly. What I was doing over the years wasn't working for me, and I think I realized that now it was time to get some real help.
So you're talking what, 3? I think what are we at, 3 to 4 plus years now of your critical incident and all the coping stuff that you've mentioned. So I mean, that's a long time to be.
Yep.
I mean, let's be honest. You're abusing yourself, right?
Oh, yeah.
For 4 years.
Well, and then also being a detective, going to all these critical incidents
on top of
chasing a bank robber who stole money and had a gun. There was one incident where somebody was driving a truck huffing and ran over 3 Girl Scouts and a troop leader and killed them. Then suicides. Then a quadruple homicide, suicide. I mean, all this stuff is just cumulative stress. And I was the only detective, so I went to all these calls. Being in surgery rooms at some of the surgery or some of the shootings where people lost their arms because they were shot with a shotgun, and watching the arm get taken off and the doctor saying, do you need this for evidence? I mean, all that stuff. But
cumulative traumas.
Yeah, that day I was like, forget it. I quit. I ain't doing this no more. And I reached out to a sergeant, and he came and sat in the squad with me. And I told him I said, I need you to come and speak with the chief with me because I'm quitting. And he's like, whoa, hold up. You're not quitting. Let's go talk to him. And I went in and the chief sent me home. And, some time passed. It was like the end of January. And he said, how are you doing? Before you come back, you have to get a psychological eval to make sure that you're fit for duty. And I was like, I'm all for it. Absolutely. Because I had been speaking about my mental health since 2019. I'm a strong advocate for it. Yeah, let's do this. Let's go. So they scheduled the appointment, and I remember driving to the appointment thinking I'm going to lie. I said, I'm going to beat this test. I'm not going to be truthful. I'm not going to be honest. I'm going to just beat the test. Mm-hmm. And the test was from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. But then when I got there, I thought, you know what, Adam, the only way that you're going to get better, the only way that you're going to get the help you need is if you're honest. And I was. And what happened was I have, my fitness for duty evaluation right here. And I was unfit for duty. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, acute stress, with dissociative features. And, I was unfit for duty, so I couldn't go back to work. And I remember reading through this fitness for duty evaluation and crying. I remember reading this stuff, and I'm like, this is me. This explains a lot. This is me. And now I have the answers. Now how do I get better? Because I wanted to get better. I wanted to heal and get better because I wanted to go back to work. And so what happened was I requested a 90-day leave of absence, and that leave of absence was approved. And like you said, how people just kind of ghost you or disappear or whatever, I felt really alone when I was on this leave of absence. I felt like I was fighting the battle by myself because I was going to therapy 2-3 times a week, psychotherapy, all kinds of other different therapy. And the plan was to go back to work in August, take a 6-month short-term disability, short-term leave of absence and go back to work. But that just didn't happen. And I didn't get any type of disability pay. I didn't get any kind of workers' compensation pay.
Hold on. So I got to back up.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding, you're dealing with traumatic stress, PTSD. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with PTSD as well.
From an officer-involved shooting that happened while you're on duty with this agency.
Yep.
And out of the goodness of their heart, they gave you this 90-day
leave of absence.
90-day leave, but you didn't get paid during this time?
I didn't. And so I got a 90-day leave of absence. I didn't get workers' compensation. I didn't get any kind of short-term disability pay. I applied for unemployment, which I eventually got, which was like $300 a week. And with unemployment, at least in Wisconsin, when you collect unemployment, you have to also apply for other jobs because that's part of the process. Yep. So I was doing that all while I was also going to therapy, trying to remain on my full-time job and go back to being a cop. And I even have a form here from the unemployment office, and it says that the claimant is able to perform suitable work in the labor market. He has no physical restrictions, but is not able to work in his role for his customary employer, which is a police department. And then it says the employer has no other work available. So they didn't even have light duty for me. I was basically going to therapy, applying for jobs that I didn't want, but I needed to because I needed the money. And I was pretty much ghosted.
And is that normal in the area that you work? Because like for us, Adam, we're used to, like, I can tell you with every ounce of confidence, you're going to be like Mitch, his story. He's on a workers' comp right now for PTSD. And the agency he works for helped him through that.
Yeah.
They didn't hang him out to dry.
Right.
They helped him through that.
Right.
And in light duty, man, people are on and off light duty all the time if it's a mental health thing because they want you healthy.
Right.
So right out of the gate, it's like, yeah, take your time, but you're on an island. Figure it out. Let us know when you're done, essentially.
Yeah. When I was unfit for duty, that's when I requested the 90-day leave of absence. And during that time, I was attending therapy in hopes to get better to go back to work. During that time, I was also put on a safety plan because some of my suicidal ideations that were discovered in the fitness for duty examination. So I was put on a safety plan. Around the same month, this is what even caused me more anxiety and more stress. One of the supervisors of the police department came out to my house. I lived in a different city, came out to my house in their squad car, in their uniform, and gave me a order to immediately stop talking about my mental health in regards to my shooting. It's right here.
What the fuck?
Said this letter is an official order to you instructing you to immediately cease and desist in the dissemination of personal testimonies regarding your mental health experiences which reflect negatively upon the police department. It also says that relates to related critical incident of which you were involved in April 2016, more specifically April 8th, 2016. It gives the incident number where you were involved in a deadly force situation. Now, I had been speaking about my mental health, the pros and cons of it since 2019, and there had never been an issue. Now I get an order to say, stop doing it, or you're going to be disciplined or possibly terminated.
I don't even have words right now. Like, I am so shocked. Look, I know, I would assume anyway that every agency has some policy or some form of a policy that, you know, you can't say things that are disparaging or make the agency you work for look bad. I know ours has that. I know. And look, we all know that, and I'm sure you can even admit as even in your administrative role, there are some policies that are very overreaching. They just are. Yep. They're written ambiguously for a reason so that they can be used however the power to be choose to see fit. And again, that's across the board, right?
Right.
But I'm first of all, I'm so sorry you went through that. I genuinely am. I know you've talked about it and you've talked about it a lot. This is new for us. And this is horrible to hear for you. Yep. It really is, Adam.
And I think a lot of it had to do with, you know, I'm the founder of Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. And, you know, I have a separate website and I have a separate Facebook page where I do post certain things. And at the time I did have educational videos, but I never said what police department I worked for or anything like that. Because even in this order, it mentions stop the threat, stop the stigma.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're even.
So it's.
So I have so much I want to say, but I'm going to be nice. Well, and I'm sure the people listening are screaming right now.
Well, and here's the thing, Brian. It's what was even more challenging was, you know, I had a meeting with the chief. And he called me in and asked me how I was doing and everything like that. And I told him how I was doing. And he told me that they were not going to extend my leave of absence, that I had the option to either resign or be terminated. And he literally had 2 letters. One was a resignation letter and one was a termination letter. And I chose not to resign and was terminated. And I even have a copy of that termination letter right here. And it basically, says, will not be extending your leave of absence for any amount of additional time. Therefore, as of April 29th, 2022, I regret to inform you that your employment has been terminated. We wish you well in your future endeavor and appreciates your time with the police department. So what happened there is the same sergeant who came out to my house and gave me the order to stop talking about it walked with me into my detective office. I cleared out my office, and then he walked me out to my vehicle. And the last thing he told me was, maybe you can speak more now that you don't work here anymore. And I'm thinking, is that what this is all about? And that was it. And I drove out of the parking lot, and my dream job of being an ERCAR man was over. And I'm thinking,
wow,
what if I would have went home and killed myself? Nobody followed up. Everybody knew I loved being a cop. Everybody knew this was a dream job for me.
Yep.
I was the first detective on the police department, the first person involved in the shooting. I received awards. I was never disciplined. I was never suspended, anything like that. And then I'm terminated. What do I do now? How do they know I wouldn't go home and kill myself? I felt like I felt like they just washed their hands of me and said, "Hey, Adam, don't work here anymore. It's not our problem."
Yep.
That's exactly how I felt.
Correct. The machine keeps turning. Yep. So I want to recap, and then we're gonna because we still got a lot more to talk about. So we're gonna kind of wrap up this segment. So I also want to touch base too, and we can get into this into our part 2. Like, unless this came later, unless I'm misunderstanding the timeline, but there was a lot of other things going on with you leading up to this, or was it leading up to this where I mean, and I won't get too in the weeds right now. We'll save it for part 2 as far as the eating disorder issues, the self-harm issues. Was that leading up to this, or was that prior to?
That was leading up to.
Leading up to. Okay. Well, let's do this. We'll wrap up here. We're going to take a break, folks, and then we'll put this podcast out, and then be prepared for part 2. Like we got a lot more to talk about. So, and then Adam's going to come back and we'll get into depth and probably even more in the weeds, and then really get into the healing aspect of this. So with that, guys, thank you for listening to this episode of Shielded Voices. Please, please, please hit the like, follow, subscribe, whatever those stupid buttons are, even though it sounds cliche. We're not doing this for money whatsoever. It just helps us to not have to send individual text messages to alert you guys in the next episode. Not to mention there's some really good links on here. Mitch is going to put a link on here for Stop the Stigma, Stop the Threat as well. So with that, we'll see you guys on the next one.